The Vince McMahon series on Netflix. We were speaking about Dave Meltzer. So he shared that on Sunday he did his latest interview for this series. He said he's done a bunch of interviews for it and said he has been asked about every subject imaginable as it pertains to Vince McMahon, and that the release date, it's coming sooner than people think, but couldn't share a release date yet. But it is coming. This is the Bill Simmons executively produced documentary series that will be on Netflix. And Vince McMahon obviously is going to be all over this thing as well. And just given the fact that, someone like a Dave Meltzer is not just part of this project, but it's a wide ranging list of topics. I mean, we will see what the finished product has. But I guess where is sort of your thought process on what kind of a expose on Vince McMahon we are going to see? And do you see this diving into more kind of hero worship with a bit of journalism in there, or are you thinking like that maybe this will be a more balanced look than maybe some would think with WWE involved?
Hearing Dave's, thoughts, or at least his comments about his particular interviews where they seemingly asked him about everything, including, a lot of the controversies that took place recently, it gives me a lot of hope. But we also know that people can be asked about these things and have it not end up being in the edit. The fact that it's on Netflix gives me a bit more hope that it's going to be more honest, because I think there's going to be a lot more criticism on it. There's going to be a bigger microscope on something at that level, especially if you don't talk about the things that everybody wants to hear. But that said, like for instance, the Beckham documentary, I think was honest to a certain level, but even then there were certain controversies that I hear from actual, football fans that they didn't necessarily touch on. So I'm expecting honesty, but maybe not complete honesty and a deep dive the way you might see on like something like a Dark Side of the Ring or something.
Do you expect Vince, like to this point on the record, all we have gotten out of Vince McMahon was that appearance on CNBC after the announcement of the pending merger, when they went on, and it was very brief. Like, do you expect?
I do.
Could you imagine Vince McMahon not addressing in some meaningful way the allegations, or like I'm not expecting some like deep explanation of them, but like how much is broached with Vince McMahon when it comes to that?
I'm expecting sort of like, hey, I made mistakes, like that
It was
sort
a
of
different time.
that sort of thing. Yeah. That's about like, what would you expect?
Because that will come off very poorly if it is just considered like this is stuff that like this is not something where you can just, well, it was so many decades ago, I was young. No, this was happening,
yeah,
over the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah. I'm expecting that level of response. I'm not expecting, like, if this was a Vince McMahon from 20 years ago, the response might be, these people are coming after me and I'm a victim. Like, that would be pretty, if he played the victim card now off of something like this, that would be pretty, enraging, and I think would be an awful look for everybody involved. But who knows, dude? It's Vince McMahon, I think, and I don't know how often we've seen him in these sort of situations, at least not recently. So what are your expectations?
I mean, I'm open-minded to it. Like I don't like, obviously it comes with the responsibility of trying to, like, I guess I'm somewhat looking at this no different than I would maybe like the Von Erich movie, that I go in there understanding that there are going to probably be things that are going to be below my expectations, but I'm hoping for several surprises in terms of like who is spoken to. They have access to everyone, and that's good and bad. You're going to have people that are coming into essentially a WWE partnered documentary series that are going to be asked about Vince McMahon and are still going to have either a deference to Vince or a fear of stating the wrong thing. So I have very little faith in performers or people that have worked for Vince McMahon speaking kind of objectively or even necessarily feeling that way. Like, those have been the biggest apologists when it comes to Vince McMahon.
Now, let's also remember this is covering his entire life and career, and therefore, as far as controversies go, it's not just the only sort of taboo isn't just going to be what's happened to him over the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. It's an entire lifetime of things, of offenses that I think he might, have to answer for, and to what depth, I guess,
Oh, I think it's
the
going to be
coverage
very
will be.
little way. Like I think they'll cover the steroid trial, which I
Mhm.
mean, there's certainly a way that they will babyface themselves in that situation, and that will be sort of the victim card of the government coming after us. A ton on the Monday Night War, I'm sure, where again it will be Big Bad Ted Turner and his checkbook coming after us. The Attitude
How
Era, the
about
Rod.
Owen?
Um, I don't think Owen gets covered in it, to be honest.
Hmm.
That would be my guess. I mean, it's multiple episodes. I can't say for sure no.
I think there will be
I don't think
some
if
of
Benoit
the
is not in it, I think Benoit will get criticism if that is omitted.
Yeah, Benoit might probably. I could see that being an omission, and maybe their excuse would just be, their decision to not recognize anything related to it at all. But
Mhm.
I can see I can see Montreal, being talked
Oh
about,
God,
and
yeah.
maybe as an addition to that, like talking about Owen as well. But
Here's the
again,
deal. It's like all these topics I mentioned, it's not even so much will they be brought up or will they not be? It's how are they covered? Like, yes, they
right,
could bring up Benoit and you can give a very simple that is not a simple story. That is not a 10-minute discussion. Um, are they going to get into his TE ratio? Are they going to get into why he had a therapeutic use exemption? Highly doubtful. You know what I mean? But you can certainly couch it in a way like here's someone that we saw no warning signs for, and it was like, listen, I'm not. Benoit's a whole different discussion, but it's like they can certainly present it in such a way that is very simple and can be check it off the box. We covered Benoit, but I'm kind of looking at like what this is an ability to go into a lot of stories with access to people and the person that rarely you're going to get to speak about this, but like Vince
well,
McMahon,
how many episodes is this?
I don't know how many the exact number is, but it's
But even
multiple.
if it's like a 10 episode, which I don't believe it is, but even if it's a 10 episode series, you could only get into so much depth for any of these massive topics that
Yeah.
you could
And
probably
a lot
spend
of
10
it's going to be the celebration of Vince McMahon, the promoter. I mean, there is
Mhm.
going to be a ton of that. And I think the idea of this will be to like this being sort of a positive look at his legacy while including some of the warts along the way. But like I'd be stunned if the name Rita Chatterton comes up in this. Like how far in the weeds. Like I'd be very stunned by that. That would be shocking if that name came up, for instance.
Well, I'll certainly say, I think there's a lot more interest, obviously, in something in a project like this now than there was even when they initially announced it. Just given maybe the conclusion of the story that they seem to have now with the sale of the company to TKO and Vince seemingly taking a step away, and just all the other controversies, of course, attached to him as well. So, Dave says sooner than people think is when this will be released. So that has to be this year then.
Go refresh
Right,
Netflix. See, 5 episodes.
right
It's
now.
rough.
Yeah.
Blue.